the morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting faint streaks of light across Ryan's small room. In the stillness, he sat on the bed, his small hands clutching a worn photo frame tightly. His eyes were fixed on the image of his late mother, Claire. Her soft brown hair, gentle eyes like a tranquil lake, and a smile carrying the warmth of an entire world once made Ryan feel utterly safe. The memories of his mother remained vivid in Ryan's mind, as if she had never left. He could picture every detail, the laughter echoing in their warm home, her gentle hands ruffling his hair, and the gaze that held a universe of love. On sunny days, the whole family would play ball in the backyard, with his mother being their most enthusiastic cheerleader. Her laughter would mingle with his father's cheerful calls. "Ryan, you're amazing!" That phrase still echoed in his ears like a sweet lullaby he never wanted to forget. Rainy evenings, however, were a different story, full of warmth and peace. His mother would sit by his bed, her voice soft and melodious as she told fairy tales of brave heroes and magical wonders. Ryan's eyes would widen as he imagined himself as the protagonist, overcoming every challenge. His father, sitting nearby by the fireplace, would brew fragrant cups of hot cocoa for the family. That sweet aroma filled the room like an invisible embrace, shielding him from the storm outside. Those were Ryan's happiest moments, feeling completely safe in the love of his parents. But then, everything shattered in an instant. The accident that year not only took his mother away, but also extinguished the light in their home. Ryan vividly remembered that rainy day when his father returned, his face drenched with rain and tears. "I'm sorry, your mother is gone, Ryan," his father said, his voice hoarse, his voice cutting into him. Ryan couldn't cry at that moment. He only felt numbness, a void spreading through his small body. From then on, the once lively house became hauntingly silent. Sunny days no longer carried cheerful encouragement, and rainy nights were accompanied only by the dripping of water outside. The chair where his mother used to sit and tell stories now sat empty, cold, like a wound that would never heal. His father tried to stay strong, filling the void with clumsy stories and meals that never tasted quite right, but Ryan knew he was wrestling with his own grief. Ryan's world now existed in two opposing halves, one bathed in the bright light of memories where his mother was always present, and the other steeped in a cold reality where he had to learn to cope with loss and loneliness. And in his heart, the longing for his mother burned fiercely, like an unextinguished flame. Nathan, Ryan's father, did everything he could to fill that void. He tried tirelessly. On weekends, he took Ryan fishing or to the park. He learned to cook the dishes Claire used to make, sometimes so clumsily that both father and son could only laugh it off. In the evenings, he told Ryan made-up stories, though they were clearly less captivating than Claire's. But despite his efforts, something in Ryan's eyes, a quiet sadness, a delicate crack that could not be mended, left Nathan feeling helpless. He kept telling himself, "I have to try harder. Ryan needs a complete family. I owe him that." Even so, in the quiet nights when Ryan was sound asleep, Nathan would often sit alone in the living room. He would stare at the family photo on the shelf where Claire's smile remained, as if she had never left. Loneliness gnawed at him, not just for losing his partner, but also for feeling powerless as he watched his son grow up without a mother's love. Then, just when Nathan was on the verge of losing hope for happiness, Miranda appeared. It was an early summer day, the sky clear and the sun shining brightly. Nathan had taken Ryan to the city library, a place they often visited to find books. While Ryan was engrossed in the children's section, Nathan wandered aimlessly among the shelves, searching for something to fill the emptiness in his heart. "Excuse me, are you looking for a specific book?" A gentle voice broke his thoughts. He turned and saw a woman with golden hair cascading over her shoulders and captivating blue eyes. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, her smile catching Nathan off guard for a moment. "Oh, no, I'm just browsing," Nathan replied, trying to mask his awkwardness. She smiled. "I'm Miranda. I work here. If you need any help, just let me know." Nathan simply nodded, but Miranda's image seemed to leave a strong impression on his mind. That afternoon, every time Nathan looked up, he noticed Miranda busy among the shelves, occasionally smiling whenever their eyes met. As Nathan and Ryan were about to leave, Miranda approached with a small book in her hand. "I think you and your son might enjoy this," she said, glancing at Ryan, who stood next to his father. "It has wonderful fairy tales, perfect for bedtime reading." Nathan took the book, his eyes filled with surprise. "Thank you, I'll give it a try." Miranda smiled again, a warm smile that made Nathan's heart race slightly faster than usual. What seemed like a fleeting encounter turned out to be the beginning of a series of events that would change both their lives. Miranda entered Nathan's life like a fresh breeze, a glimmering light that dispelled the persistent darkness within him. With her perfectly kept golden hair, striking blue eyes, and charming smile, she easily captured Nathan's heart. He believed that Miranda was not only an ideal partner for him, but also someone who could bring back the warmth and love Ryan had missed since his mother's passing. At first, Miranda presented herself as an ideal companion. She helped Nathan organize the house, often cooked cozy dinners, and even spent time talking to Ryan, asking about his hobbies and school. Nathan felt like he had found the missing piece of his life. But Ryan didn't feel the same. From the day Miranda moved in, he began to notice strange signs. When Nathan was home, Miranda was as sweet as an angel. She called Ryan a lovely little boy and frequently offered him homemade cookies. But when Nathan left, her smile vanished like smoke. One evening, when Nathan had to leave on a sudden business trip, Miranda took on the responsibility of looking after Ryan. The boy sat at the dining table, struggling with a tough math problem, while Miranda scrolled through her phone. "Miss Miranda?" Ryan asked timidly. "Could you help me with this question?" Miranda looked up, her gaze cold. "Figure it out yourself. I don't have time to teach you this nonsense." Ryan lowered his head, hiding his disappointment. He returned to his math problem, but a growing unease gnawed at him. Miranda wasn't who she pretended to be in front of his father. The following evening, Ryan spent hours drawing a picture. He wanted to surprise his dad, a drawing of the two of them standing by the lake where they often went fishing. But when Miranda walked into the living room and saw the picture, she scoffed. "You think your dad would want this? How childish," she said, her voice sharp as a knife, cutting through Ryan's heart. Ryan froze, his eyes wide with shock. He wanted to shout in protest, to defend the gift he had poured his heart into, but instead he quietly folded the drawing and tucked it into his school bag. "Good, at least you know when to keep quiet," Miranda said, a cold smile curling her lips. From that day on, Miranda's attitude toward Ryan grew increasingly cruel. One time, Ryan spilled some juice on the floor while watching a movie. Before he could clean it up, Miranda grabbed his shoulder, squeezing so hard it hurt. "You're such a nuisance. I don't understand how your dad puts up with you," she hissed through gritted teeth. "I'm sorry," Ryan whispered, his voice trembling, tears welling up in his eyes. Miranda leaned down, her tone menacing. "Listen closely, kid. If you breathe a word of this to your dad, I'll make your life so miserable you'll regret it." From then on, Ryan lived in fear. He didn't dare tell Nathan because he knew his father wouldn't believe him. Miranda always appeared perfect in front of him, a gentle, caring woman who took care of the family. Nathan, blinded by his new love, failed to notice the sadness in his son's eyes or the faint bruises on his small arms. One winter morning, Ryan wore a sweater his mother had knitted for him before she passed away. It was an old, slightly worn blue sweater, but it was warm and carried his mother's gentle scent. When Miranda saw it, she frowned. "Take that outdated thing off," she ordered. "It doesn't suit you at all." "But my mom made it for me," Ryan protested weakly. Miranda waved dismissively, her eyes full of disdain. "I don't care. Your mom isn't here anymore. Stop holding on to meaningless things." Her words struck Ryan like a dagger to the heart. Silently, he removed the sweater, tears streaming down his face, though he made sure Miranda wouldn't see them. One night, as pale moonlight seeped through the curtains, Ryan lay tossing and turning in bed. The ticking clock in the living room echoed steadily, but it couldn't mask the soft footsteps of Miranda downstairs. He sat up, his eyes wide, his heart telling him something was wrong. He stepped barefoot onto the cold wooden floor, careful not to make any noise. From the hallway, he saw light filtering through the crack of the living room door. Miranda was sitting on the sofa, her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was low but urgent, as though she were trying to keep something secret. "Jason, I convinced him to increase the insurance," Miranda whispered, her voice cutting through the stillness like a blade. And Ryan held his breath, leaning closer, pressing himself against the wall to stay hidden. "Yes, I know. After the wedding, all it'll take is one accident. Everything will be perfect. Just make sure we can disappear right after," she continued, her tone calm but chilling, each word stabbing deeper into Ryan's heart. He froze. His ears rang, but the words he had just heard echoed loudly in his mind. Miranda was plotting to kill his father, and there was another man, Jason. Who was Jason? What was his connection to Miranda? And more horrifyingly, why would she want to do this? Ryan stood motionless, his small hand gripping the edge of the wall so tightly his knuckles turned white. In that moment, he wanted to confront Miranda, to scream at her to stop, but fear chained him in place. He remembered the times Miranda had gripped his arm, the chilling threats, "If you talk, you'll regret it." He crept back to his room, quietly closing the door, then sank to the floor. Hugging his knees tightly, waves of panic washed over him like a tsunami. How could he tell his father? Would Nathan believe him, or would he dismiss it, as he had before, thinking Ryan was imagining things? Ryan sat in silence, the darkness of the room swallowing him whole. That morning, gentle sunlight streamed through the window, lighting the house, which felt strangely quiet. Miranda had gone out, leaving a brief note. "I'm meeting the wedding planner. Don't bother me on the phone." As the door clicked shut, Ryan's heart began to race. This might be his only chance to search for answers to the questions that had been eating away at him. Taking a deep breath, Ryan stood up from the sofa. He looked around the house, his eyes cautiously resting on the staircase leading to Miranda's room. Each step he took was as light as a feather, but his heart pounded like a drum. If he got caught, the thought made him shiver, but he knew he couldn't back down. He paused, listening. There was no sound. The Pratt Hospital gentle experiences alone. That doesn't sound like the door. A price from the environment's changing. The world was so quiet he couldn't distill. Open gently. He pushed the door open gently. He paused, listening. There was no sound. The Pratt Hospital was so still. Miranda's room was impeccably tidy, as though nothing could be out of place. The bed was covered with a white duvet, not a wrinkle in sight. The dressing table gleamed, each bottle of perfume and makeup item neatly arranged. Everything was too perfect, unsettlingly so. Someone who lived in such a flawless facade must be hiding something, Ryan thought. He began his search. Opening the drawers of the dressing table, he found only jewelry boxes and a few unremarkable notebooks. Moving to the nightstand, he discovered a thin folder. His heart pounded as he opened it. At first, the contents appeared ordinary: wedding documents, guest lists, restaurant invoices. But as he flipped through another set of papers, his eyes landed on bolded numbers on a page. It was a life insurance policy. Nathan's name was clearly listed as the policyholder, and right below it was an enormous payout amount. $5 million? Ryan whispered, his eyes widening. But what terrified him most was the beneficiary. It wasn't him. It was Miranda. Ryan placed the documents down, his hands trembling. Miranda had no reason to keep this unless she had sinister intentions, but the pain didn't end there. He glanced at the drawer below and found a thick envelope. Inside were photographs. Ryan pulled out each picture, his eyes widening as he recognized them. In the photos, Miranda wasn't standing next to Nathan. She was with another man, tall, dark-haired, with a cunning look in his eyes. Miranda and this man were laughing, their intimacy unmistakable. In one picture, they embraced on a beach. In another, they sat at an upscale restaurant, Miranda leaning her head on his shoulder. Ryan didn't know who this man was, but his gut told him this was Jason, the person Miranda had mentioned in her late-night call. He continued flipping through the loose papers in the envelope, and everything became even clearer. A few pages contained short, handwritten plans. After the honeymoon, transfer funds from Nathan's account. Convince Nathan to increase insurance by $1 million before the wedding. Change all assets to Miranda's name. Confirm with lawyer. Ryan stared at the handwritten lines, his sense of horror growing. These notes couldn't be random. Miranda wasn't just deceiving his father, she was plotting to take everything and possibly harm him to achieve her goals. Holding the papers and photos tightly, Ryan felt as though the air around him was suffocating. Miranda's small, neatly lit room now seemed like a trap, and he felt cornered by the terrifying truth he had just uncovered. He didn't know what to do or where to start. "I should tell Dad immediately," a voice in his head said. But another voice, weaker and full of doubt, countered. "But will Dad believe me? He loves Miranda. She's the one who made him smile again. What if he doesn't believe me? What if he gets angry and thinks I'm just jealous?" Ryan sank to the floor, his eyes fixed on the photos. In each one, Miranda smiled brightly with Jason, her eyes shining with a happiness and ease that Ryan had never seen her share with his father. He felt anger, but his fear was even stronger. Closing his eyes, he tried to calm himself. In the darkness behind his eyelids, old memories surfaced more vividly than ever, memories of life before his mother was gone. He saw his mother, Claire, standing in the kitchen, her hair loosely tied back, cooking spaghetti that he and his dad loved. His father, Nathan, sat at the dining table telling funny work stories that made the whole family burst into laughter. Ryan recalled the feeling of sitting on the sofa between them, his mother's knitted blanket draped over his legs, while his dad read a bedtime story. He also remembered summer afternoons by the lake, when the family went fishing together. His mother would pack a basket full of snacks, and his dad always joked that Ryan would catch a talking goldfish. He remembered his mom brushing his hair, her gentle voice saying, "Ryan, you are the most wonderful thing in our lives." But then everything changed. The car accident that year took his mother away, not just her, but also the light that had filled their small home. His father, despite trying to be strong, often sat silently in the living room, his gaze distant, as if looking at a place Ryan couldn't reach. Ryan knew that, even though his dad never said it, he was grieving more deeply than anyone could imagine. When Miranda appeared, Nathan changed. He smiled more, cared more for their home, and the light in his eyes, once dimmed, seemed to return, at least in part. Ryan opened his eyes, the warmth of those memories fading, replaced by a growing unease. He couldn't let Miranda destroy his family, but he also couldn't bear to see his father hurt again. Nathan needed Miranda, or at least he thought he did. If Ryan told the truth, if he did something to stop the wedding, would his dad resent him? But then, a stronger thought emerged, pushing away all hesitation. I can't lose Dad. I've already lost Mom, and I can't let Miranda hurt him. No matter what happens, I have to protect him. Ryan lowered his head, tears streaming down his cheeks. In that moment, he realized the most important thing wasn't whether his dad would be angry, but how to keep him safe. I won't let her hurt him. I have to do something, even if I'm scared. He remembered his mother's words, no matter what happens, you must always be brave enough to protect the ones you love. Those words lit a small flame in his heart, pushing back some of the darkness of his fear. Ryan took a deep breath, his small hands gripping the photos tightly. He knew there was no turning back. The brilliant light from the stained glass windows in the church bathed Miranda's white wedding gown, making her the center of attention. She walked gracefully, her face radiant as she approached the altar where Nathan waited. But Ryan, standing beside his father as the ring bearer, couldn't stop trembling. In his hands was a thick envelope containing undeniable evidence. This was the most important moment of his life, the last chance to protect his father from Miranda's sinister plot. But he was also terrified, afraid that his father wouldn't believe him, that he'd ruin what should have been the happiest day of his dad's life. Standing next to Nathan, Ryan felt his heart pounding in his chest. He knew what was coming, but witnessing it unfold made him increasingly tense. Before the wedding, after finding the photos and documents in Miranda's room, he had secretly sought help from the police. He remembered that morning as sunlight streamed through the curtains, holding the trembling stack of documents in his hands. He knew he needed to act, but calling or emailing wasn't safe. Miranda controlled everything in the house. Looking at his bike parked outside, he made a quick decision. I have to go to the police station. Ryan pedaled down the small road leading to the nearest police station. His legs shook, but his determination pushed the bike forward faster. When he arrived, the glass doors slid open, and he saw an officer sitting at the front desk. I need help, Ryan said, out of breath, holding out the documents. My dad's in danger. There's a woman about to marry him, and I have proof she wants to hurt him. The officer looked at the boy, his expression serious but gentle. What's your name? Calm down and tell me what's going on, he said, his voice steady but encouraging. I'm Ryan. This is what I found in her room, Ryan said, his voice trembling but his words clear. He handed over the photos, documents, and handwritten notes detailing Miranda's plans. Among them, the scrawled phrases, after the wedding, transfer funds from Nathan's account, and convince Nathan to increase insurance, made the officer's brow furrow. The officer examined the documents closely before signaling to a colleague. We need to verify this immediately, he said, his tone more urgent. Do you have anything else? The officer asked. Ryan nodded, pulling a small recorder from his pocket. It was something he'd found among his mother's old belongings. He had secretly recorded Miranda's conversation with Jason during her phone call the night before. He pressed play, and Miranda's cold voice echoed clearly. Jason, I convinced him to increase the insurance. After the wedding, we'll have it all. The officer's face showed astonishment. You did a great job, Ryan, he said. We'll take care of this, don't worry. Your dad will be safe. The police contacted their superiors and formulated a plan. They agreed to keep the operation discreet, sending officers to the church on the wedding day to apprehend Miranda and Jason before they could act. Despite being just a child, Ryan had done everything he could. Now, as police officers entered the church, he felt a small sense of relief. He hadn't stayed silent. He had done the right thing. When the officiant asked, if anyone objects to this marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace, time seemed to slow down for Ryan. He could hear each breath he took and feel every thud of his racing heart. His small legs trembled, but he gripped the envelope tightly, took a deep breath, and shouted, I object! The entire church froze. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Nathan turned to look at his son, his expression a mix of confusion and surprise. Ryan, what are you saying? Ryan swallowed hard, his throat dry, but he knew he couldn't stop. You can't marry her, he shouted, tears welling in his eyes. She doesn't love you. She just wants to hurt you. Miranda turned, her cold eyes locking onto Ryan. But she quickly masked her emotions, replacing them with a gentle, yet sorrowful expression. Ryan, I know it's hard for you to see your dad moving on, but this isn't the way to handle it, she said, her voice sweet but carrying an undertone of menace. It's not because I don't like you, Ryan cried, tears streaming down his face. I have proof. Ryan held up the envelope. Dear, he said, his voice trembling. I found this in her room. Nathan took the envelope from his son, his hands shaking so much he almost dropped it. His face was a mix of confusion and doubt, but as he opened the envelope and looked inside, shock washed over him. The papers inside weren't just documents. They were the life insurance policy in his name, clearly listing Nathan as the policyholder. But what left him stunned was the sole beneficiary, Miranda. Nathan took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. But the bolded numbers on the page burned into his vision, painful and undeniable. He flipped through, and his eyes landed on the photos, each one like a knife cutting deeper into his heart. Miranda, the woman he had trusted and loved, stood beside another man. That man, with a sly smile, had his arms wrapped around Miranda intimately. In each photo, Miranda's smile wasn't the one Nathan had thought she reserved for him. It was a smile of true happiness, but not with him. Nathan stood frozen, the papers in his hands feeling unbearably heavy. His legs seemed to lose their strength, forcing him to lean against the altar for support. "Miranda," his voice cracked, as if each word was being strangled in his throat. "Is this true?" He looked up at Miranda, his eyes red and filled with anguish. "Why?" he asked, his voice trembling with pain and torment. "What did I do wrong? I trusted you. I thought we were building a family, a new life. Was it all a lie?" Miranda remained silent, unable to meet his gaze. The fake smile she always wore in front of Nathan was gone, replaced by a look of confusion and unease. Nathan took a step back, his hands falling limp, the photos slipping from his grip and scattering on the floor like fragments of shattered memories. He lowered his head, his shoulders shaking. All his trust, all his hope for a happy family had been wiped away. It felt as though the world around him was collapsing. Ryan, standing nearby, cautiously stepped forward, his eyes filled with worry. "Dad," he called softly, but Nathan didn't respond. He just stood there, like a weathered statue, his eyes full of sorrow, fixed on Miranda, searching for an explanation, a glimmer of hope that it was all a misunderstanding. But deep down, Nathan knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was the raw, unvarnished truth, tearing him apart from within. Realizing she was cornered, Miranda tried to regain her composure. "Nathan, you don't understand," she said, her voice shaky but her eyes calculating. "These things, they're just a misunderstanding. The man in the photos is just a friend. This kid, he's jealous and trying to ruin everything." But Ryan, summoning all his courage, took a step forward, looking straight at his father. "It's not a misunderstanding, Dad. I heard her talking to that man. I know she just wants the insurance money and plans to hurt you." The murmurs in the church, already unsettled by the revelations, were abruptly silenced by the loud bang of the main doors being flung open. All eyes turned as light from outside poured in, illuminating two police officers escorting a tall man with disheveled black hair and sun-weathered skin. His hands were cuffed tightly behind his back. A long scar down his cheek made his face unmistakable. This was Jason, the man from the photos. Jason struggled against the officers as they led him to the center of the church, but his restraints and their firm grip gave him no chance. When he looked up, his eyes immediately locked on Miranda, who stood pale and frozen at the altar. "Miranda!" Jason shouted, his voice a mix of panic and rage. "You promised we'd run away together. You said everything was ready." Jason's words exploded like a bomb in the tense atmosphere. The murmuring guests fell completely silent, their attention now fixed on Miranda and Jason. Nathan turned, his face a mixture of shock and fury. "Miranda," he said hoarsely. "Who is he? What's going on?" Miranda took a step back, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. "Nathan, listen to me," she began hastily, her voice trembling. "This isn't what you think. I don't know why he's here." "But..." Jason didn't let her continue. Don't know why I'm here, he hissed, his eyes blazing with anger. You told me to wait at the hotel, said everything would be perfect. I followed your plan exactly. Nathan stood as if struck by a storm, every shred of trust in his heart being swept away. So, it's true, he murmured, his voice barely audible. You didn't just lie to me. You planned to kill me, with him. Miranda, sensing the piercing glare Nathan was directing at her, still tried to maintain her composure. She stepped forward, her voice soft but desperate. Nathan, you have to understand, this is a huge misunderstanding. Everything you've seen, it's not what it looks like. Jason is just an old friend. He has nothing to do with us. She reached out to touch Nathan's hand, but he pulled back instantly, his eyes brimming with both rage and disappointment. Nothing to do with us, he said, his voice low but simmering with anger. Can you look me in the eye and tell me these photos aren't real? That these notes weren't written by you? Miranda blinked rapidly, trying to conceal her mounting panic. Nathan, I had my reasons. I just wanted to protect us, to secure our future. Her voice cracked and tears began to flow. You have to believe me. I only wanted to make things better for us. Nathan's gaze remained on her, filled with profound sorrow and bitterness. By deceiving me? By planning to harm me for insurance money? Miranda stood motionless, as though all her excuses had been exhausted. A fleeting look of terror crossed her face before her demeanor abruptly shifted. She let out a harsh laugh, her tone turning sharp and defiant. Fine, Nathan. If that's what you want to believe, then yes, I needed the money. But it wasn't for me. I did everything for us, for our future. Don't you understand? Nathan recoiled from her words, each one cutting deeper. Don't you dare tell me you did this for me, he said hoarsely. You didn't do it for anyone but yourself. Jason was just your pawn, wasn't he? Cornered, Miranda's voice turned icy as she shouted, Fine, if that's what you think, then yes, but don't forget, Nathan, you're the one who let me into your life. You're the one who trusted me, so if anyone's to blame, it's you. The church fell deathly silent, her words hanging in the air like a bitter echo. Nathan stared at her, his expression no longer one of anger, but of empty resignation, as though everything inside him had been hollowed out. Jason let out a bitter laugh, his voice dripping with scorn and resentment. No, Nathan, he said, turning to him. She's the mastermind. Every part of this, raising the insurance, transferring the assets, and planning your accident, was her idea. Miranda froze, her eyes wide with panic as she stared at Jason, who was now exposing everything. Shut up, she screamed, her voice breaking with desperation. You're ruining everything, Jason. If you say another word, we'll lose it all. But Jason no longer cared. Lose it all, he retorted, his voice filled with venom. Miranda, I've already lost everything because of you. Turning back to Nathan, he continued bitterly. Do you think she loves you? She only loves your money. I was just her tool, and now so are you. Nathan felt the ground beneath him give way. Turning back to Miranda, his face was etched with utter revulsion. You lied to me from the start, he said, his voice heavy with pain. It was all just a con. With no more lies left to weave, Miranda erupted into laughter. It was cold and mocking, echoing through the church like a chilling wind. That's right, she sneered. Did you really think I loved you, Nathan? I only wanted your money. Jason and I had the perfect plan, but it seems I underestimated that little brat. Her confession sliced through the silence, leaving everyone stunned and horrified. The guests' gazes bore into her with disbelief and disgust. Nathan stood unmoving, his red-rimmed eyes fixed on her. "Why?" he whispered. "I trusted you. I thought we could be a family." Before Miranda could respond, the police officers stepped forward, seizing her firmly. "Miranda Johnson," one of them said, his voice stern, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and financial fraud." Miranda thrashed against their grip, screaming in desperation, "No, you don't understand. It's all his fault. Jason made me do it. I just wanted to help Nathan. But no one was listening." Ha 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 ha. Oh, ha 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 ha. But no one was listening. Nathan stood silently, pulling Ryan close as the officers led Miranda and Jason out of the church. When the doors closed behind them, a heavy silence fell over the room. Ryan stepped forward and took his father's hand. "Dad, I need you," he said earnestly. "She didn't love you. I don't want to lose you like I lost Mom." The simple, heartfelt words from his son broke through Nathan's despair. He knelt down, pulling Ryan into a tight embrace, his shoulders trembling. "I'm sorry, Ryan," he whispered. "I didn't listen to you. I put you in danger. I'm so sorry." Ryan shook his head, wrapping his arms around his father. "It's okay, Dad," he whispered back. "As long as you're safe, I don't need anything else." In that moment, Nathan realized that happiness wasn't about finding the perfect partner or creating an ideal family. Happiness was here, in the love and bravery of his son, who had risked everything to protect him. Months later, Nathan and Ryan began rebuilding their lives from the wreckage. The house, once filled with Miranda's shadow and deceit, now held peace, simplicity, and the bond they had rediscovered. On the first morning of their new chapter, Nathan clumsily prepared breakfast in the kitchen. The eggs in the pan were slightly burnt, but their aroma filled the house. Ryan walked in, still sleepy-eyed, but he smiled at his dad. "Burnt eggs still taste good, Dad," he said, taking the plate Nathan handed him. They sat together at the table, saying little, but the silence was no longer heavy. Nathan looked at his son, who seemed to have grown more mature. "Thank you, Ryan," he said suddenly. "Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I was wrong." Ryan set down his fork and looked at his father. "I just want you to be happy. I don't need anything else but you." His words pierced through the lingering clouds in Nathan's heart, filling him with light. Smiling, Nathan reached across the table, taking his son's hand and squeezing it tightly. That afternoon, Nathan decided to take Ryan to the lake, a place their family used to visit when Claire was still alive. It had been such a long time since the father and son last came here. The lake remained as beautiful as ever, its still waters reflecting the golden hues of the late afternoon sun. Ryan ran straight to the lakeside, his small feet bouncing on the grass like a little fawn. Nathan stood behind, his gaze following the boy with an unusual warmth in his heart. Ryan cast his fishing rod into the water, focusing as though he were on an important mission. Nathan walked over and sat beside his son. "Do you remember this place?" he asked. Ryan nodded, his eyes sparkling with joy. I remember, Mom. She always sat over there," he said, pointing to the big tree by the lakeshore. "She always brought cookies, and you used to tell me I'd catch a talking goldfish." Nathan chuckled, but his smile quickly gave way to quiet reflection. "I'm sorry, Ryan," he said, his voice softening. "I've made you go through too much, things no child should have to endure. If your mom were still here, she'd be so disappointed in me." Ryan shook his head, looking up at his father with forgiving eyes. "Mom would be proud of you because you tried, and she'd be proud of me too, wouldn't she, Dad?" Nathan pulled his son into an embrace, his arms wrapping tightly around Ryan's small frame. "Yes, son, she would be proud of you, and she would be proud of us for trying to be a family, even if it's just the two of us." A moment later, Ryan shouted in excitement as his fishing line started to move. "Dad, I got one!" he yelled, his small hands struggling with the fishing rod. Nathan sprang to his feet, rushing over to help his son hold the rod steady. Together they reeled in a large, wriggling fish that glistened in the sunlight. Ryan held up his prize triumphantly, his laughter echoing across the lake. His eyes shone like little lanterns, filling Nathan's heart with joy. "I did it, Dad! I caught one!" Nathan laughed, gently patting his son's shoulder. "You did great, Ryan. I'm so proud of you." He paused, his gaze soft as he looked at the boy. And thank you. You didn't just save me, you saved our little family." Ryan set the fish down, wiping sweat from his forehead with his small hands. "You're my family, Dad. I'll always protect you. Just like you always protect me. We'll always stick together, right?" Nathan knelt down, taking Ryan's tiny hands in his. "That's right, son. We'll always stick together, and I promise I'll do everything I can to make sure we're always happy." Under the twilight sky, the silhouettes of the father and son melded into one, creating a serene picture they would cherish forever. By the lakeshore, Nathan realized that happiness wasn't about having a perfect family, but about the irreplaceable love and connection of the most important people in his life. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey with Ryan. If this story has touched your heart or sparked empathy and inspiration, please share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to help us reach our important milestone of 1,000 subscribers. Your support is not just a great encouragement, but also a way to help us continue spreading meaningful stories about kindness and connection. See you in the next story.